I was 10 years old and being wheeled into the hospital late at night. I remember seeing Christmas lights decorating the front of the hospital. Once I was inside, I remember the doctor telling my parents that I had pneumonia, and my mom started to cry. Those are the only things I remember about my visit, up until I was left alone on the first night. I have no idea what time it was when this occurred, but probably very late at night. Everyone else in the rooms around me were sleeping, and so was I, until I heard something. I was facing the center of the room when I opened my eyes. I heard someone's shoes squeaking on the floor outside my room. I turned over and saw a nurse walk by, but she had walked out of my vision past my window before I could see her face. About 2 seconds passed, and then I saw her walk by again. This is when my heart stopped beating, because of what exactly I saw. She was walking by at a very fast pace, and was looking directly at me through my window, in an exaggerated stare, meaning she was walking by, but had her head turned completely to the right side as she did, not able to see in front of her as she walked, and just staring at me. Very quickly, she was out of sight again. Then suddenly, she started walking by again in the opposite direction. She was walking back and forth in front of my window. This time, her head turned completely to the left, again, staring into my eyes. She had brown hair that wasn't kept, and she looked insane. On this pass, I noted that her eyes were opened very wide. At this point, I thought my heart would explode because of how it was beating and how scared I was. Nobody else was in sight. When she walked out of my vision, a second later, she was walking by again. Every time, her head turned to the side, looking at me. I remember thinking, even at 10 years old, that something about her was very wrong. I didn't move a muscle and could do nothing except just watch this incredibly scary woman walk back and forth in front of my window. One of the times that she walked by, she was smiling a huge, sickening smile that made tears well up in my eyes. Every time she walked by, she could not see what was in front of her because the only thing she wanted to see was me, in my bed, through my window. It seemed like several minutes had passed until finally, she did not walk by again. She simply walked by one last time and then was gone. I sat there in bed and peered out my window expecting her to walk by again at any moment, but she didn't. I must have stared out my window for the better part of an hour before my eyes got so heavy that I fell asleep. The next morning I awoke with my dad sitting in a chair next to my bed, reading a book. He smiled when he saw I was awake, and I told him what I saw before I fell asleep. He didn't seem to be scared by this, or even very alarmed. He asked me if I was sure it wasn't a dream. I was 100% sure then, and I'm 100% sure now. The woman was real. It happened, and she was wearing the same thing as every other nurse I saw. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks and didn't see her again.
When I was 14 years old, I was hospitalized. I broke 2 ribs riding a dirt bike and had to have minor surgery. I was in the hospital for 2 days and 1 night. The night I spent in the hospital, they brought another guy into my room at about 9 o'clock. I was dozing off because of the effect of the painkillers they gave me. They situated the guy, who appeared to be about my age. The nurses eventually left after introducing the guy to me. His name was Ben. After they left, Ben asked what I was in for. I told him, and then I asked him the same question. He told me he'd rather not say. I thought that was kind of weird. We were both silent for a while, until a nurse popped in and asked if we wanted her to put in a movie for us. We both said no. The nurse said okay, and walked out of the room, turning off the light as she did. Some light from the hallway kept the room barely lit. I looked at Ben, and his head was facing forward at the wall. Some time passed, and I adjusted my pillow and tried to get comfortable in order to go to sleep. I was looking at the ceiling of my hospital room and thought about random things when Ben suddenly asked me, "You think you might fall asleep soon?" His question caught me off guard, and I didn't respond for a few seconds. After thinking about his unusual question, I answered, "Yeah, probably. I'm pretty tired. Why?" Ben then said back, "Because when you do, I'm going to murder you." For a moment, I thought he was joking, and I even smiled and let out a very small, forced chuckle. He didn't smile back. He just looked at the wall. I realized he was asking seriously, and my heart started beating very fast. I finally replied to him, "What the hell? Are you serious?" He then leaned his head back and said back, "Yep." I hit the nurse call button on my bed, and she walked into the room promptly. She asked what I needed, and I told her what Ben had said. She looked at him, and still looking at the wall, he said, "I will do it." She told him he wasn't funny, and that he would be switching rooms. She then called in another nurse, and the two of them rolled his bed out of the room. When he rolled by, he covered his head with the covers, and screamed in a way that showed he was very obviously not well. This scared the hell out of me. About 30 minutes later, the nurse walked back in, and I asked who he was and what that was about. She told me not to worry about it, and that they put him in a room by himself. I told her that really creeped me out, and asked if he could possibly walk back to my room. She said that wasn't likely, as he was blind.
This happened to me 4 years ago, in 2012. I was in the hospital, and for reasons I'd rather not share. It's not interesting anyway, but what is interesting is what happened one day while I was there. I woke up early one morning, before the sun came up, to see that another girl was now sharing the room with me. She wasn't there before. She was laying in her bed and appeared to be crying. For the longest time, I didn't say anything. I eventually did speak, and when I did, I said, "Hi, are you okay?" I realized that question was a dumb one, considering she was in the hospital, crying. She responded back and said she didn't feel good. I told her I was sorry and that I didn't feel good either. I asked her what was wrong, and she didn't respond. I told her my name was Katie and asked what hers was. She replied, "Julie." She continued to cry, and I just laid there, feeling bad for her, feeling helpless. I had fallen back to sleep, and when I woke up, she was gone. Which was weird as hell, I thought. That day, I was excited, because I was leaving after having been there a few days. I laid in bed and watched TV, until my sister and my mom eventually arrived and came in with a doctor and a nurse. They asked me how I felt, and my mom and sister hugged me, and I told everyone I felt great and was ready to leave. I got up and went to the restroom to change, and when I came out, I asked the doctor about the girl that was in my room earlier that morning, and he said he didn't know who she was or that there was another girl there, but that another doctor may have moved her to my room temporarily and then back out when another room became available. I shrugged, and on my way out of the room, I walked up to the nurse's station and asked the nurse who had been helping me for the past few days where the girl was that was in my room. She told me she had passed away. I was shocked and felt so bad. I asked when. The nurse said 6 days ago, and I was confused. I told her there was another girl in my room earlier that morning and asked what the girl's name was that had died. She responded to me and said, "Julie."